Hey, hun, this is Dr. A. Before we get into this amazing message I have for you today, I just want to thank you for stopping by, and then welcome you if you're new, and welcome you back if you've already been here. Today's message is for everyone, but in particular, this is for my ladies out there who have made a mistake or multiple mistakes in your life, which, let's be honest, that's all of us. And this mistake or series of mistakes have left you feeling regretful, guilty. Perhaps you hold some resentment or unforgiveness towards yourself or others, disappointment, and so on and so forth. If that alone speaks to you, then this is definitely your message. And over the next several minutes or more, my hope is that what I share will give you peace, help you find healing, or at least get you on the path towards these things. And most of all, I hope it will bless you the way it blessed me. So thank you again and enjoy. So I had to share this revelation that I received not too long ago. And with this particular revelation, though it came to me more recently, it actually stemmed from something that happened many, many years ago. Now, I can't recall the actual year, but what I do remember is that I was getting ready for an event. And for this particular event, I wanted to put on some eyelashes. So I'm in my room and I go to get out the glue for my strip eyelashes. And this particular eyelash glue I had was black because I thought the black eyelash glue would just blend in better with my eyelashes. So anyway, I noticed that this tube of eyelash glue, it definitely had product in it, but for some reason the product was not coming out. So I squeezed the tube, and much to my dismay, the product, it came out all right. But because of how I had it angled and because of the amount of force I used, the product ended up getting all the way up on the ceiling of my room. And I remember thinking to myself, something told me not to squeeze that. And lo and behold, I instantly regretted it as it left several spots on my ceiling. And I tried to quickly cover it up, but it actually made the stain worse, and so it spread. How many times in our lives does that small voice tell us not to do something, and regrettably, we do it anyway, right? But a girl had places to be, eyelashes needed to be on, so I said, whatever, and I continued getting ready for this event. I finished my makeup, made it to the event on time, and that was that. But going back to my mistake and the mess I made, that was the last time I ever did something like that. And interestingly, afterwards and really subconsciously, I made several changes, particularly when using products. One, I always made sure to, with any product, to be careful as to how I got the product out the tube or whatever container it was in. For instance, now if I'm having trouble getting product out, I'll make sure it's nothing stuck in the opening of the tube. I'll hold the product over a napkin or the sink so that I don't cause a mess. And while I did keep until this day have the black eyelash glue, I ended up buying a different type of glue which has an applicator brush so I can easily brush the glue along the eyelash strip. So long story short, I learned my lesson. So years passed and the stain caused by my mistake with the eyelash glue remained on my ceiling. It remained there for years and I never really noticed or paid it much attention. But on the rare occasion where I would pay attention to or glance at it, instead of looking at it and instantly being reminded of the regret I felt when I made that mistake, I would be reminded of what I learned from that mistake, and that was to just be mindful, to take my time and listen to my gut. Because my gut, like I said, definitely told me if I squeeze this product from this eyelash glue, it's going to go everywhere, which it did. So one day I wake up, and tell me if you can relate, but I woke up and for the life of me, I could not get up out of bed. So I think I was on my phone for a little bit, and then I just so happened to look at the ceiling at the stain that this eyelash glue left, and I thought about why I never covered up the stain, and I realized that unless I paid really, really close attention to it, for the most part it went unnoticed. Then I looked at the remainder of the ceiling, and when I looked at the bigger picture, aka the entirety of my ceiling, that one little stain did not make much of a difference. It was definitely there, but again, when I looked at the entirety of my ceiling, it made no difference. And no one else noticed it. Though it had initially, it really didn't bother me. And the second reason I never covered up or painted over the stain is because it kind of just became a part of my ceiling. And it's funny because when it first happened, my thought was to get rid of it, and I tried to use a napkin to blot it out and get rid of it, but it stayed there. And I actually didn't mind. But that's not the best part. The best part is the revelation that I received when I looked at this stain. And what made the revelation that I received that much more beautiful is that it came at the perfect time in my life. And before I get into all the revelations, I have to say this, and I hope you get this, and that is God can and will use anything or anyone to speak to you, to heal you, to give you revelation. Never underestimate his wisdom, power, and love for you. So getting back to the beginning of the revelation, at this particular time in my life, and I have to backtrack and tell you where I was mentally and spiritually at this time in my life. At this particular time, I knew that I was being called to my season of reaping, to a new season, a season of transition, to receive things that God had been preparing me for years. However, I knew that there were a lot of things that I had not dealt with, or rather that I was still dealing with, that I needed to heal from and overcome before I moved forward and stepped into this new and beautiful season of my life. Specifically, and by no coincidence at all, I received multiple revelations from this one stain. The same week, I had prayed to God about some regret, some guilt, and unforgiveness that was still in my heart. And I told God, I said, I really don't know how to get rid of this. And it's been here for so long. Please help me, right? And so through this stain on the wall, God spoke to me. And the first thing that he told me, that he revealed to me, is that those mistakes that I had unforgiveness, regrets, guilt about were nothing compared to the whole of my life. That in the grander scheme of things, those mistakes did not matter. Let that sink in. Your mistakes, they are nothing compared to the grander scheme, the bigger picture of your life. The second thing that God revealed to me is that in order to heal from unforgiveness, resentment, guilt, regret, and so on, you have to make peace with it. I made peace with the stain on my wall. I made peace with it by understanding that it was and had become a part of my ceiling. Your mistakes are just that, a part of life of yours and mine. And by making peace and accepting them as a part of your story, you are then freed and no longer held captive by the byproducts of mistakes. And those are unforgiveness, guilt, regret, resentment, disappointment, and you fill in the blanks. Third, he showed me that sometimes when we try so hard to cover up our mistakes, when we try to remain in control, try to change things that are long past, that by fixating on it, we end up making it worse. For instance, when that product got on my ceiling, I tried to wipe it away, but what was done was done. I tried to cover it, and in fact, it made the stain even worse. I should have just let the mistake, the stain on the wall, just be, but instead I tried to cover it, I tried to hide it, and it just made the stain that much bigger. And it's not to say don't apologize and don't try to right your wrongs. It's to say that the mistake itself has already been made. Let it be. The fourth revelation that I received is that when we look back at our mistakes and the things that we regret in life, we should not look upon them with negativity in our hearts, but rather with the understanding of what it taught us. Every time I look at this stain on my ceiling, I am reminded to again take my time to be mindful and listen to that still voice. The still voice that told me if I squeeze this tube, I'm going to make a mess, is the same voice that tells us stop and sometimes start. The voice that says don't get into that relationship, don't move to that city, don't take that job, don't remain friends with that person. That voice that you and I both have. The one that says go ahead and start the business, write the book, buy the plane ticket, and so on. And so now my encouragement is this: when you look back at your mistakes, think about what you learned, which leads into the next revelation. And that is, a lot of the mistakes, the messes that we make in our lives, we make them so that we can learn from them and not make even bigger, costlier mistakes or messes in the future. After that day, whether I was using a makeup product or some other product, I was very mindful with how I used them. And if it had not been for that one time where I got the glue on my ceiling, I would not be as careful moving forward. And who knows, if I wasn't more careful in the future, I might have, done the same thing and gotten something on an all-white outfit or something worse than a wall, which is like one of my worst fears, getting something on a nice white outfit. But making that small mistake kept me from making even bigger mistakes in the future, just like if you allow it. Your mistakes, no matter the size, prevent you from worse in the future. And something else that I learned is that a lot of times we pay significantly more attention to our mistakes than others. For years, this stain remained on the ceiling of my room, and yet no one else noticed it. More than likely, you were thinking more about your mistakes than anyone else. And you know what else? Even if other people did notice the stain, it wouldn't have mattered, because guess what? It doesn't matter what people continue to say or think about your mistakes, the past. The same way you would have to look really close and inspect my ceiling to see the stain. If people are still harping on your mistakes, they are paying significantly way too much attention, which is a problem for them, not you. And so I'll leave you with this. I want you to think about the mistakes that you've made and really think about them. It could be mistakes that you made in friendships, relationships, mistakes that you're still dealing with the consequences of, any mistake. And I want to give you these 5 key takeaways. And those are, 1, that mistake or even those mistakes are nothing. They are minor compared to the whole of your life and the sum of who you are. 2, to make peace with those mistakes, you must understand and recognize that they are just a part of your story. 3, do not try to cover up or wipe away your mistakes. Don't try to hide them, because the more you try to hide them and fight against what already is, the worse that stain becomes, the more that mistake grows, the more power you give to it. 4th, when you look back at that mistake, instead think about the lessons that it taught you, which leads to the 5th revelation, and that is, the mistakes we make in life save us. They protect us. They prevent us from making even bigger mistakes and messes later in life. And you know something I just received? When I was looking at my ceiling, in addition to this stain, and in addition to this moment where I received this revelation, I noticed that there were other imperfections in my ceiling. And when I think about it, I realize that even with that stain, the small crack I saw, the imperfections, even with these things, my ceiling is still a ceiling. That means that whoever God calls you to be, whatever He called you to do, your identity, your purpose, it does not change because of the mistakes that you made. No matter how big the stain, the imperfection, the flaws, no matter how big the mistake, your identity and purpose remain the same. They remain intact. Though there is that glue stain on the ceiling of my room, my ceiling is still a ceiling. Its identity has not changed. And my ceiling, it still has a purpose. It still provides shelter. It still insulates and helps regulate the temperature. It still provides structural support. It is still strong. And it is still beautifully made. And you know what? I'm going to give you this second thought that just came to me too. If it was not for this mistake I made years ago, I would have missed out on the blessings that were attached to it. What I mistakenly thought was a burden or a bad thing is the very thing God used to provide me with the very revelation that I'm receiving now. So know that your mistakes, no matter how big or small, how seemingly insignificant, are not a waste. A stain on my ceiling was essentially caused by a wasted product. However, that product was not wasted at all. It ended up being the very thing that God would use to bless me and answer my prayers and bless you all so many years later. because our mistakes are not just lessons learned for ourselves, but lessons learned to bless others. And I could say so much more about this alone, but I think that's the perfect place to stop. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you. I see you. And again, I hope this message blessed you. If it did, please let me know, and I wish you peace, love, and all the above.